And welcome back. Over the past 2 months, two scandals have actually consumed the administration of New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo, which is the state's gross mishandling of the coronavirus pandemic, especially in the state's nursing homes, and the governor's reported harassment of several women around him. Here sharing a little bit more about this is the founding partner at the Boyd Law Group, Patrick J. Boyd. And Patrick, I'll start off by saying, when we talk about this pandemic, a lot of people were giving Governor Cuomo a lot of praise, particularly for the fact of how he handled it. Later on, we understand the challenge rises about the nursing homes. For someone who's not so familiar about the nursing home scandal, please walk us through that.
Sure. And I agree with you. In particular, in the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of coverage and attention to his press conferences on the pandemic and his what a lot of people have embraced as common sense feedback on how to deal with the pandemic and how to protect ourselves by using protective clothing and those kinds of things. The problem seems to have been that early on, when there was a concern about how many people would be treated and were ill, where those people would go and whether or not they could be or should be sent to nursing homes, which had the capacity to serve people and help, but perhaps did not have the protections in place for those people that were already in the nursing home, and to make sure those people in the nursing homes who we now know are definitely the most vulnerable might not be protected if extra patients were forced to come into the nursing homes. Cuomo did mandate that some nursing homes take patients that had COVID. Some of those patients went to nursing homes and spread that COVID, and people died. And so he's faced a lot of attacks for that. And obviously, in the political process, he's supposed to be scrutinized for everything he does. So I think some of those attacks are fair.
When we talk about that, you got attacks, you got people who consequently died as a result. When we talk about the actual consequences for that, what are they?
At this point, political more than legal. One of the things that he did that has been of grave concern to lawyers in particular is that when he decided to tell these nursing homes, you must take these patients, he also said to these nursing homes, I'm going to grant you immunity for anything that happens to patients who come into the nursing homes. In other words, you must take these patients, but if you make a mistake, nobody can bring a legal claim against you. And people definitely have been upset about that. And imagine you have a loved one who's in a safe nursing home. You've been told to keep that loved one in the nursing home because it's the safest place. And then the government mandates that patients who have COVID are transferred to that nursing home, and your loved one is not cared for, grows ill, and dies. It's certainly a reason to be upset, and based on the law and the way Governor Cuomo acted, a person who lost that loved one would not have a legal claim by virtue of the immunity he granted to the nursing homes. Very controversial position he took.
And there's a lot of things talking about immunity. Not only did he give immunity there, he gave immunity also at several other places as well. Does that hurt in terms of from a legal perspective? And I guess it does when you talk about these particular families who've lost so many in nursing homes, but outside the families in nursing homes, how many people are actually handcuffed by these legal decisions?
I mean, I think the legislation is going to handcuff a great number of aggrieved parties. And one of the problems we have at the law, of course, is that we don't know what the courts are ultimately going to say. We just know what the legislature has said so far. So I think there'll be court battles to come to determine the scope of the immunity and its impact. But at first blush, it looks bad and it looks unfortunate. And then the added problem for our governor is that there's now been this scandal about his reporting of the number of deaths in the nursing homes. He was releasing data indicating that a certain number of people died. And one of the people on his own administration came forward saying, no, that data is not correct or accurate. Actually, the numbers are far greater. So to the extent that he made a mistake and then tried to cover it up with the political reporting of numbers, there are some grave concerns about that are certainly being investigated and should be investigated, of course.
Yeah. And then on his own personal life, in addition to these political scandals, the numbers have just recently been released about his polling. And for the first time ever, looks at the lowest polling numbers in his administration.
The polling numbers have gone down. I can't quite decide, Darren, and I know we're going to talk about this other part of it, but they perked up some, of course, when he was seen as this national leader with respect to COVID, and he even had a book about it, I guess. But then the post-COVID unraveling of some of these tales has been damning. And then in addition, these allegations of sexual harassment, which certainly take a person who was, as a legislator, seen to be a champion of women's rights, and put his own actions under the microscope in terms of, on the one hand, advocating for women, but not, at least allegedly, controlling his own behavior in a manner that's adequately respectful of women that work with him.
So all this leads to an impeachment investigation, and bring us up to speed with this impeachment investigation. Do we think that first of all, let's walk through it. How's that going to go down?
Sure. So to be clear, there's really two different investigations going on. First, there's the Attorney General, who's been appointed to investigate his actions as to, I think there's 11 women who have made allegations against him now. And she has subpoena powers. She will interview witnesses, and her investigation is probably the most interesting for us, because it will result in a public report, okay? And it can continue even if they're investigating him after his term in office expires. On the other hand, there's the impeachment process, which resolves around an investigation into his conduct, but might ultimately not be finished, if you will, before he ceases his term in office, and they're not allowed to impeach him after he leaves. So if you were to look at the two investigations, probably the one spearheaded by the Attorney General is the more important of the two, because we'll get some public results from it with a report, and because it can't sort of be shut down if it doesn't get completed before he finishes his term in office.
Yeah. So I guess the big question is, will he seek re-election, given the fact that his term in office is coming to a close? Have you heard anything?
I certainly haven't yet. I think the thing that I've been interested in as an employment lawyer is focusing a little bit on these allegations of these women, because one of the things that people may not understand is that, and there's at least 11 allegations with different women, right? So they run the gamut of experience. But a lot of these women who have come forward don't have a monetary motivation for coming forward. Many of them have claims that are so old they wouldn't have any ability to pursue the claim for damages anymore. Their time to file in court has expired. Many of them have claims that are not significant enough to rise to the level of being actionable. For example, him asking a woman to kiss her. That may be offensive to her and unpleasant, but that wouldn't be a legally actionable claim. Nevertheless, the woman brought the claim to challenge his behavior, right? And I do think that when you look at the allegations in that span of them, and notice that a lot of the women, now they may have political motivations, right, but don't have monetary motivations for their claims, that does at least give some insight into what they're doing and lend some credibility to them that might not always exist when you have a plaintiff with a sexual harassment claim.
All right. We got the Attorney General who's conducting her investigation. And obviously, we know that investigation continues to be ongoing, the impeachment investigation. I want to ask you, in general, how long do you think that takes for legislators to be able to conduct an impeachment investigation?
It seems that there's a good chance that it will take too long. That is, that his term will be over before they have completion of the investigation. We haven't had an impeachment of a governor in New York since 1913. So it's been a long time since it's happened. The standard is not clearly articulated because it hasn't been something that's been adjudicated in a long time. So my suspicion, although I don't have any unique insider sources, is that it's going to take too long for us to get a resolution on that point, rather that the impeachment will be something hanging over his head going into re-election, just like these allegations of sexual harassment were.
Yeah. Well, Patrick, we got to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us and bringing us up to speed about this. And of course, if people want more information, they can visit Patrick at his website, theboydlawgroup.com. There you can find out more information and get connected to him. We encourage you now. Don't go anywhere. We've got more open coming up right after this.